Welcome back, everyone. It's Finance Friday, another special edition of Money Girl, where I answer your burning money questions. Today's topic comes from Smeet, who says, "We want to thank you and your team for making extremely helpful and informative podcasts. We're learning a lot and appreciate it. I have an HSA question. My wife and I are both covered under my employer's HSA eligible health plan. And we're both also covered under her employer's health plan, which is not HSA eligible. I opened an HSA last year and was under the impression I could contribute the maximum for a family plan. But within a week, I found out that I am not eligible to have an HSA since I am covered under my wife's plan. We have tried to have me removed from my wife's insurance, but her employer refused. But I had already contributed about $250 and $55 came from my employer. They have taken their portion back, but I'm not sure what to do with my contribution. Since it was pre-tax, how do I correct the taxes? For 2025, I'm planning to get coverage only through my employer's HSA eligible plan. My wife will remain on her employer's plan and be on my plan as secondary insurance so we can max out the family contribution limit. Will that be okay?" Thank you so much for your kind words and questions, Smeet. I know managing an HSA as a couple can get a little confusing. This podcast will explain the benefits of an HSA and the rules for who can max out the family limit, whether you're married, have a domestic partner, or children. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me on episode 869. I'm Laura Adams, an award-winning author, finance spokesperson, money speaker, founder of the Money Stack, a Substack newsletter, and host of this podcast, Money Girl, with over 43 million downloads. If you're getting value from the free content we love creating, subscribe and consider submitting a 5-star rating or review on your podcast app of choice. And if you have a question about money for the show, leave it on our voicemail at 302-364-0308. And you can also send me an email and sign up for the free Money Stack newsletter when you visit lauradadams.com. All right, most of you have probably heard of a health savings account, or HSA, but I'll give you a brief overview. HSAs were created in 2003 to help Americans manage and reduce the rising cost of healthcare. They are really, I think, one of the most powerful tax-advantaged accounts because they allow you to cut medical costs, eliminate taxes, and invest your balance for growth. Many financial experts call it a triple tax threat because HSAs provide 3 significant tax advantages. Number 1, your HSA contributions are tax deductible. Number 2, your HSA earnings grow tax deferred. And number 3, your HSA withdrawals are never taxed. So when you take money from an HSA to pay qualified healthcare expenses, including medical, dental, hearing, and vision care costs, your contributions and all the account earnings are entirely tax-free. So it's an amazing tax-advantaged account. But the catch is that not everyone qualifies. So according to the IRS, to qualify for an HSA contribution, you must meet the following 4 requirements. So number 1, you've got to be covered by an HSA eligible health plan. Number 2, you must have no other health coverage except for disability, accident, specific illness, dental, vision, or other long-term care insurance. Number 3, you can't be enrolled in Medicare. And number 4, you can't be claimed as someone else's dependent. So let's talk about the HSA rules for married couples and see if we can help Smeet out. When you're married, the IRS considers you a single unit for HSA purposes. So if one or both of you qualify for an HSA, the most you can contribute is the allowable family limit. And having a family health plan means that it covers you and somebody else. It could be a spouse or a dependent child or both. For 2024, if you have a family health plan, the HSA contribution limit is up to $8,300. That limit will increase next year to $8,550. If you're married and both of you have, let's say, your own individual HSA eligible coverage, Each spouse can contribute up to the annual individual limit, which is $4,150 for 2024, and that limit is also going to increase in 2025. It will go up to $4,300. And if you're over 55, you can contribute an additional $1,000 to your HSA with either a family or an individual plan. There are cases when both spouses are covered by the same HSA eligible health plan. In that case, you can have an HSA in one spouse's name or opt for separate individual HSAs as long as you don't exceed the annual family contribution limit. But you can never have a joint HSA. So remember that. You can either have individual accounts if each of you qualify or a family plan, if just one of you qualifies. Because Smeet says he will no longer be covered by his wife's health plan next year and will continue enrollment in his employer's HSA eligible plan, he will qualify for an HSA. Now, being on both plans was a violation of that second requirement that I mentioned, which is that you can have no other health coverage except for various types of, disability or accident insurance, that sort of thing. So when he was enrolled in two different health plans, that made him ineligible for an HSA. But again, he's going to qualify next year because he's only going to have his own employer's HSA eligible plan. And since Smeet's wife will also be covered on his HSA eligible plan next year, he will qualify to contribute up to the annual family limit, which, as I mentioned, will be $8,550 for 2025. And his wife will also be covered on her own primary plan that she's getting from her employer, which is allowed. Remember that Smeet is the qualifying HSA holder, not his wife, so he cannot have another health plan, but she can. Now, I also want to mention that the HSA rules are different if you're unmarried, if you have a domestic partner, because the IRS considers you two separate entities for HSA purposes. Again, you have to be married to get some of these sort of special HSA rules. But if you both have HSA eligible health plans and you're not a tax dependent of the other partner, and you have someone else like a child on your health plan, you could both contribute up to the family maximum. But when each person in a domestic partnership only insures themselves, you can only each contribute up to the individual HSA limit. However, you cannot pay your partner's eligible medical expenses with your HSA if you're unmarried. You can only pay costs for yourself and any dependents that are on your policy. If one partner is a tax dependent of the other, only the partner with the HSA eligible health plan could have an HSA and fund it up to the annual family contribution limit. And the HSA account holder can use it to pay for the dependent's eligible expenses. Remember that being a dependent makes you ineligible for your own HSA, according to the fourth requirement that I reviewed. So you can see that domestic partnership is, really just considered as two separate people versus a married couple that is considered a unit for HSA purposes. And I mentioned that you can't have a joint HSA. Each spouse or partner who wants to contribute to one must qualify on their own and open a separate account. And you can't transfer funds between HSAs. However, you can withdraw funds to pay or reimburse eligible healthcare expenses for yourself, a spouse, and any dependents. Some employers offer HSA matching, which gets included in the annual individual and family limits that I mentioned. But note that whether you get an HSA qualified insurance on your own or through an employer, you can take it with you if you leave your job, if you change your health plan, or you retire. A great HSA feature is that there's no spending deadline. So if you don't have any medical expenses or you just don't want to use your HSA funds to pay for them, your balance simply rolls over from year to year. Even if you no longer have an HSA eligible plan, you can always spend that money on qualified out-of-pocket healthcare costs for you, dependents, and a spouse, no matter if you file taxes jointly or separately. Note that withdrawing HSA funds for non-qualified expenses like groceries or going on a vacation means that you must pay income taxes on those funds plus a steep 20% penalty. So it's never wise to put money in an HSA that you might need for actual living expenses. And if you still have HSA funds after age 65, it becomes similar to a retirement account. You can use it for non-medical expenses without penalty. However, you still must pay income tax on non-qualified withdrawals. So that's a great reason to max out an HSA yearly, even if you don't expect many medical expenses. Now, let's get back to Smeat's question about handling the HSA contributions he made of about $250 before he quickly realized that he wasn't eligible for an HSA and shouldn't have made those contributions. It's always your responsibility to catch and correct excess contributions or mistaken HSA contributions, and it's best to contact your account administrator for help clearing up an overpayment or a mistaken payment. If you overcontribute to an HSA and don't correct it, or you just choose to apply the excess to a future year, you must pay a 6% penalty on the excess every year it remains in your account. But if you do what Smeat did and you catch the mistake before you file taxes, including any extensions, you can avoid that 6% penalty by withdrawing the excess plus any investment earnings. In Smeat's case, where there was a mistaken contribution, reversing it is straightforward. There may be a form on his HSA portal that can be submitted, or he can contact his HSA administrator. Reversing a contribution you didn't mean to make will add it to your taxable income through the forms your HSA administrator must file annually. They have to file Form 1099-SA, showing all your distributions, and Form 5498-SA, showing all your contributions for the year. Because Smeat's distribution is due to a mistaken contribution, Smeat won't be subject to an additional 20% penalty for the correction. But it's important to make the correction as soon as possible, ideally before the end of the year, or certainly before your tax filing due date at the very latest. Smeat, I hope this has been helpful. You can definitely have your wife on your HSA eligible plan and contribute up to the family limit. And getting that contribution, that mistaken contribution corrected should be pretty easy. And like I said, if you have any trouble, certainly contact your account administrator. And before we go, a quick reminder to subscribe to The Money Stack. That's my newsletter that goes out 3 to 4 times a month. You can subscribe for free when you visit lauradadams.com. It's filled with money tips, tools, news, challenges, and things I enjoy. You can subscribe for free or support the show as a paid member and get access to live educational events. That's all for now. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, here's to living a richer life. Money Girl is a quick and dirty tips podcast, and I want to thank our amazing team. Steve Rickyberg audio engineers the show. Brandon Gachis is our director of podcast. Holly Hutchins is our digital operations specialist. Morgan Christensen is our advertising operations specialist. And Davina Tomlin is our marketing and publicity associate.